I just finished watching the new season of Silent Witness. So we are currently at season 29, and this is the first storyline, of course, which is over 2 episodes. So in this video, with full spoilers, we're covering episodes 1 and 2, which I think was called something like The Disappearance of Alice Hill. We are going to dive into all of these things, but important to say, if you do want to watch something else, non-spoiler-ish, go ahead and catch something else. But the whole gang is back. We're going to dive into the whole thing. But, oh my God, let's talk about the pink elephant in the room. What? We're in Birmingham? We have now come to the West Midlands? Excuse me? It does seem like shows, much like Midsummer Murders, when we have a new sergeant working with Tom or whoever else is there, right? Shows either choose to address the big change or apparently not even mention the big change. So we're no longer at the Lyell Centre. The Lyell Centre is not to be seen. We're not even in London. Now, I don't know what happened to the Lyell Centre, and because I did not catch those initial Sam Ryan years of Silent Witness, because you may recall me saying it was visually literally too hard to watch with the wavy screen. Ultimately, I don't know if those first seasons were at the Lyell Centre, but it does feel for me like we've had 28 seasons at the Lyell, and it's up in a poof of smoke. And right now, I don't even know the name of the center we're at. We're in perhaps what I believe may have been called a state-of-the-art forensic facility in Birmingham. But what was it? The Barrowman Center, the Barman Center, the Barrow Center, the John Barrowman Center? I do not recall. All I do know is that it does rather look like an empty soundstage that was minimally and high-tech furnished. It was giving me more vibes of Waking the Dead when Frankie took over, super minimalistic, but kind of that nice, big, heavy, Victorian, grounded, really gravitas of the Lyell Centre is not here in the same way. I don't even really remember what the office is where Nikki's working. She seems to be working at a desk floating in the middle of a room. And Jack and Kit appear to be in a middle facility that, again, it feels like you're in a modernistic Brechtian play a little more than a replacement of the Lyell Centre. So, suffice to say, the whole gang is back, even though we're all in the West Midlands. We've got Nikki and Jack, of course. We have Harriet and Kit, who are back supporting Nikki and Jack in their work, from above in the form of Harriet, from below in the form of Kit, helping Jack. And it's so great to see everybody come back to fruition. Now, I just want to, again, address the next big elephant in the room, which is at the end of so full spoilers, at the end of the last season, at the end of season 28, Nikki and Jack get married. And yet, not once do we actually even get to hear them or anyone reference that in the course of this first 2 episodes, right? We've both moved the entire cast of characters to Birmingham. No one's talked about any of them individually having an issue leaving their homes or anything in London and coming to Birmingham. We don't know anything about their marriage, except that I believe in episode 2, they were a little lovey-dovey, and how adorable. Kit was like, I feel like a single Pringle. I am there for you, Kit. I think this character is so fantastic. And they kind of just like laugh and just take her in. But it's weird, right? It's kind of like in Midsummer Murders when Tom gets a new DS and no one mentions it. And it's like, well, what happened to Ben? What happened to this one or that one? It's a bit jarring, but we're going to run with it. So we are now no longer in Kansas. We are no longer in the confines of comfortable London. We are now not in the north. We are in Birmingham. And so we have a whole different atmosphere, let's say, to take in. And I want to remind you, this is not a northern accent per se. It is a Brummie accent with a bit of the north and the south all jumbled together. It is quite delightful. If you are as much of an Alison Hammond fan as I am, you really might enjoy listening to all of these supporting characters. However, right, it was an adjustment because while not everyone in London is speaking with a regular Southern accent, right? Jack is Northern Irish. Ultimately, I don't have a multitude of, let's just say, more Northern accents to deal with. So I did, in this case, turn on closed captions because I struggled more than I'm used to listening to more regional accents more consistently. And then you get the hang of it and you're like, okay, I guess I know where I am. I'm still not in Sunderland with Vera, but ultimately it's a transition. So let's dive into this first story, the disappearance of Alice Hill. Now, something does feel different about the start of this season. The episode writing, I'm not going to say directing because I don't really know just yet, but the writing does feel a little different. This storyline felt significantly different, and we're going to dive into it, but I found it somewhat jarring. Ultimately, let's just start with the whole top of the episode of the first episode, which was darkness, right? I'm following this couple apparently illicitly into the bedroom. I really can't see her. I really can't see him, but I do know there's a stalker or an intruder who gets away. Ultimately, though, I didn't really see either of them. And then I don't think I saw her again for another possibly 20 or 30 minutes. And that is a weird, like, directorial oversight to me, where I have nothing to ground myself, certainly at the start of an episode, but really not at the start of a season. I couldn't see the characters. I didn't really know I couldn't put a name to the face of who we were talking about. And that did set a bit of a strange experience up for me. Everybody was in shadow or half darkness because it was night, and that was the end of it. And then what happened? The best thing happened. Dino Fetcher appeared. Now, in my opinion, everything is improved by more than a little bit Dino Fetcher. Dino Fetcher, of course, played the husband. What was his name? I can't even remember. Kevin Webb? The husband, right? Mr. Webb. Mr. Hill? Mr. Webb? I think it was Webb. Suffice to say, Dino Fetcher is such a joyful he's a big guy. He has a big presence. He's certainly very handsome, but he just has like a nice bright light that comes out of him whenever you see him, even in a character who seems to be as angry as this character was. I believe he may be even starring in the O'Mary production on the West End with Catherine Tate right now. So he's truly having his own moment and he's a bit everywhere, but he deserves to be on more of our screens. He was in that excellent show, possibly called Paranoia, I believe, with Indira Varma. I wish that we got more seasons of that, but more Dino Fetcher. But there's Dino Fetcher. So we don't really know who she is. We haven't really properly seen her. We know some guys behind bars, and we don't really know why. And what's now meant to happen? I found it really jarring. Between the two episodes, it was kind of like we had a crime committed right toward the beginning of the first episode of the hitman shooting and killing a man and possibly maiming other people, if not killing them. And then he was apprehended almost immediately, like within 20 minutes, possibly 10 minutes. And I know that he's a pro. I know that he's essentially a hitman. It seems like he works for the mob or something, West Midlands mob, something like this, maybe. And it seemed when they apprehended him, right? When we're in that garage with all the really nice cars, which I don't know how they'd be parked like that and taken in and out of anything like that. It just seems so over the top. I don't know how he would have given himself up so quickly with that squad around him, even just with the mention of his daughter's name. So That maybe is my issue of disbelief in the situation, but I kind of didn't buy it because it almost made it sound like the police would do damage to his daughter if he didn't turn himself in and go to jail. I can't really imagine that he couldn't have figured something else out and still have taken better care of his daughter, who apparently was in a rehab facility. So, as I think about it now, there were so many loose ends in this episode, I don't even know where to begin with all of the loose ends, right? Ultimately, let's start with the biggest loose end, I think, which is all of this forensic discovery happens, and it is very interesting that obviously we're not in London anymore and we have maybe a different style of cop to deal with. I don't know if that's fair to say, but we haven't been in Birmingham before. So now I have this Brummy DCI and I have her DI. So I'm not even dealing with a DS, but a DI, and a very good detective, both of them apparently, but especially the DI. And they're not taking the forensic pathologist's word maybe as much as they were taking it in London. Now, I don't know if this is regional. I don't know if I meant to wonder if this is a regional thing. It's a little unclear, but we're going to keep giving the benefit of the doubt. Then we discover that the cop in charge of the case, our DCI, two strange things happened which did not feel right. Again, loose ends that made me think the writing is somewhat off this season, or maybe there's a new writer. And the first piece of this was the DI is stepping in all of these pivotal moments, like a fellow cop dies, and the DCI is nowhere to be seen. And then the DI keeps showing up even when she's not meant to be showing up. She's showing up on her day she called in sick. She's showing up here and there. But the DCI isn't present and seemingly doesn't know about it. I don't know that I bought that as a concept for that to happen. Okay, so there's that initial element. And then on top of it, I do get the element where the DCI has, as Nikki said, not my words, possibly suppressed evidence, right? So when we do the flashback toward the end of episode 2, and we see that this DCI then 5 years ago, I believe, was a DI, she had the person come in and talk, she had the lover come in and talk about the stalker. And then she said, we don't want to muddy the waters. I believe they said muddy the waters approximately 22 times in the course of these 2 episodes. It was a touch much, right? It made me wonder if the repetition was needed for other reasons rather than great writing. And so she suppressed the evidence so that they could convict the husband because they were so gosh darn sure. And then that was another dangling thing here, right? We have a dangling loose end of the DI going to confront the guy, and then we get no payoff, right? We see that she's alarmed that she's been caught out, and then we never hear about it again, right? The next time we see her, she's in a room with the now released husband, the widow of this woman who's died, the widower, and she's now just quickly wrapping up and solving the issue. It was a very abrupt end as well. So, another loose end. This really bothered me most, right? By the time we get to the end of the story, the end of episode 2, we know that the lawyer, the best friend, the confidant, he is obviously the killer. He's been the stalker the whole time. He was the stalker who then killed Alice back then and buried her. He was also the one who I guess thought he was going to get a better deal if he had the early in episode 1 convicted hitman take credit for this. I don't know. Like, shouldn't we have gotten a little payoff in finding out that the hitman was going to get a lot more money for his daughter's rehab, that there was a reason for that? Because the hitman spilled way too quickly. And then he started talking about his first kill, let alone recent kills. It all seemed so gratuitous and so out of the blue. None of it really landed in terms of how did that even happen? Or more importantly, why did it happen? But with that in mind, we know the lawyer's the stalker. We know the lawyer toward the end of episode 2 also stabs the lover, Steve, who gave her the poetry book, and then went back into the house to burn the evidence, right? So all of these things have stacked up, but the evidence is now burnt. Okay, so this is the thing which has left me with kind of a bad taste in my mouth about this story and these first 2 episodes. The evidence is burnt. While we're assessing this and figuring this out, just from a weird, glaring look in a wedding video on the main website, we see that the lawyer doesn't seem happy. The husband has somehow walked away without anyone noticing at all until it's too late. That husband has then stabbed and killed the lawyer murderer by the lake. And as he leaves, all he says to Nikki, and we see Nikki with egg on her face at the end, he just says, "I'm so sorry." What was I meant to be seeing there? Right? Ultimately, the forensic pathologists did help lead to the right person being identified as the killer. Maybe, but not with proof. If the husband killed the murdering lawyer and never heard a confession, do we know that they could have even gotten proof that he died? Or are we not meant to care because he's dead already? But if he's dead, the lawyer, does that not still place doubt against the husband if we don't have at least a clear confession or conviction on the lawyer? The husband's done himself in because he killed a man in cold blood, even out of vengeance. But the look on Nikki's face is so baffling that all I actually thought was, could they not have had any evidence to even convict the lawyer because the lawyer burned that evidence in the house? It was so convoluted and it dangled, right? It wasn't a clean ending at all. So, what dangling do I have? I have the murderer being killed by the husband, totally dangles, don't know if he could have been convicted. I have the husband not fully being exonerated because of that, dangling still, because Nikki didn't know if she should have believed him or not. We don't even know if any evidence was found at his home or office or anything else. We have the dangling evidence, we have the dangling experience of the DCI, not to mention the fact that we also had muddying those waters to keep the running joke going. This weird, horrible family, like Alice's family was so unpleasant. Was that dangling there for us to think either the father or the brother had to be a killer? I honestly did, red herring wise, absolutely think her creepy, horrible brother could have been her stalker too. When the father was going at the other daughter, Saskia, by the reservoir, and he was going at her being like, you just want attention, you want this and that. I didn't disbelieve him when she kind of was coming on to the husband, Dino Fetcher, after the release. I saw all of those things. He was just so aggressive, so unpleasant. I think that's the husband from Last Tango in Halifax. What a fun actor, but what a miserable character. So were we meant to think that the father and the brother could have been the bad guys? I almost feel like we were meant to go down that road, but even they dangled. I don't know why they thought the inn with Jilly, DCI Bashir, should have exempted them from being horrible to everyone. To everyone. They were horrible to their daughter. They were horrible to the police. They were horrible to literally the husband who lost his wife, who could have been the killer. Fair enough. Like, it's a horrible position to be in. But they were just plain awful. So this was a weird episode. The writing did not feel as crisp as last season. I can already tell that it seemed like every single episode of season 28 was really about an important theme or a system, whether that was an intentional thing or not. This one didn't feel in that category in any way whatsoever. It also let us off the hook with the killer of the initial killing way too quickly. The forensic scientists were also the ones who pushed the investigating on their own. So I think that's the thing that ultimately did bother me most, right? In London, Jack and Nikki often accompany detectives in what I have to imagine would be more than normally in real life, that pathologists or forensic scientists are going to like interview people after the fact of the crime scene. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If somebody knows a lot about forensic science, please tell me if forensic scientists or pathologists go on so many interviews with cops like they did in London. But here, yes, they were shut down, but they did a lot of investigating on their own. They totally seemed to get support from Harriet. And ultimately, it did make me wonder if I was meant in any way to distrust the way the legal system is operating in Birmingham or just outside of London. And I don't know if that was intentional or it was very unintentional and a very unfortunate byproduct. But for this to be the first episode that brings us away from the Lyell, not even mentioned, we're not even talking about London. They say they're newcomers right at the start. But ultimately, right, like the main detective suppressed evidence, they have to investigate outside their scope of jurisdiction. It left a weird taste in my mouth. And the preview for this next storyline also doesn't feel like it's based on the type of system or themes that the last season was based on. So we're gonna see what this season is like. I always prefer when at least someone addresses a big change quickly, that we're all on the same page and we're all playing the same game to some degree. I'm thrilled that Maggie Steed is back in the form of Harriet. Thrilled that Francesca Mills, hello Francesca Mills, you are such a shining light in this show as the always enthusiastic Kit who gets to work with Jack. David Caves is there with his little goatee doing everything right, really. And Emilia Fox just is that grounding force throughout this show. So it's great to be back in it. It's weird to see the changes. The feeling of the show is strange, so I wonder if we do have new writers or what some of the decision making was there. And let's see what episode 2 brings. What did you think? Did those dangling loose ends bother you as much as they bothered me? Did I miss any other dangling loose ends that did not feel right? Because the more I think about it, in spite of Dino Fetcher and all the good things that come along with him, there were so many weird things about this episode. Was that your impression as well? Let me know.